So The Chosen just gave us 2 new scenes for The Chosen Season 4. Of course, we've been looking at them and trying to dissect them, but this one, while it's not a scriptural scene, is really interesting for character development and especially for Gaius. But this one is all about Gaius and Quintus. So let's jump into it and let me tell you about what happened in this scene. So the scene begins with Gaius and this other guard, who I always forget his name, traveling through Capernaum, and they're looking at the different stuff that's happening. Now remember, to give some context, we're seeing the village of kind of pilgrims that are coming to see Jesus growing and growing and growing. It's getting more outrully, right? It's getting more chaotic, and so Quintus is having a really hard time controlling this. Remember in Season 3, as Gaius was tasked with basically making sure that they were taken care of, making sure that they were not overrunning the city or causing issues. He is sort of not doing a very good job at that. He's not listening to Quintus very well. Remember in Season 3 when he began to help them with things, he began basically befriending them, and this is going to be a big deal for Quintus because they're starting to eat into his revenue for the city. They're starting to eat into all the stuff that he has there, and he's not able to tax them enough to really make up for it. So we see here as Gaius and this other centurion are walking in Capernaum, and they see Quintus in Capernaum. Now this is very strange, right? Quintus is the boss man. He is the guy that is in charge of it all. And so now he is in the middle of the square yelling at these peons in order to actually pick up poop on the ground. And so you see as Quintus is very upset, he's yelling at these people to pick up all the trash all over the place and literal poop that's on the ground, probably from some donkey or something. He is very livid. This is not where he is supposed to be. This is not how he envisioned his leadership being here, right? So immediately he gets very upset. Gaius asks what's wrong, and he knows what's coming, right? He knows that this is going to be an issue and that he's probably going to get a talking to here. So we see as Quintus gets upset and more upset, he drags Gaius around the corner and begins having a conversation with him where he presses him up against the wall. Now, if you remember, we actually saw this moment in the trailer for the ending of filming of Season 4. So we were looking forward to this, absolutely. Quintus pushes him up against the wall and begins to speak to him. Now, obviously, none of this is really scriptural, and you can go back and watch that clip, or if it's already offline, I'm not going to word for word kind of explain what's happening here, but Quintus is yelling at Gaius and saying, I told you to control all of this. I told you to make sure that these villagers, were not taking advantage of the city or kind of making my job harder, essentially. And he says, whenever Rome sent me here, they thought that I couldn't handle a larger city, but I was doing so well, and all of my taxes were in the green, and all of my revenue was just up and up and up, and everybody was saying I was doing a great job, essentially. But now all of my numbers are in the red, and he's starting to have a lot of issues, right? Now, Gaius is obviously scared, but you can see in his face that he's not like he was back in Season 2. Remember in Season 2 when he was promoted to Premiordine, this changed a lot for him. Or was it Season 1 that he was promoted? He might have been promoted in Season 1, and then in Season 2 we really saw him in that role. But as he's a Premiordine, he's in charge of a ton of other centurions. He's a big boss in Capernaum now. And so Gaius has a totally different reaction to Quintus being upset than he did back in Season 1. Remember when he got on his knees and he was like saying, like, I'm sorry, Dominus, I'm sorry for what Matthew was doing in the office. But here, he's not really responding in that way at all. He's just kind of saying what he needs to get by, but he's not really groveling at the feet of Quintus anymore. It's a totally different explanation here. Totally different reaction for Gaius. So we continue on. Quintus just keeps on getting more angry and more angry. And hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this type of content with breakdowns of The Chosen or our Israel content or deep dives into the Bible, we would really love your support over on patreon.com/thesnipelife. This is by far the best way to help us out, and it helps us to keep independent from YouTube, even when they decide not to show our content to anybody. So if you want to help out our ministry, this would be a great way to do it for only $5 a month. Thanks. And more angry. And at one point in the conversation, near the end of the conversation, Quintus ends up saying, did I promote you too hastily? And should I not have promoted this Germanic, centurion? Should I bring you back down to being a centurion again? Now, this got me thinking, because I think this could be a huge theory for what we're actually going to see later on. I think, especially after what Dallas actually said in the live stream, he said that Gaius was basically not going to listen to Quintus. That means that Gaius is probably going to be punished for what he's been doing and for what he will do in the future moments, right? What if Gaius actually gets demoted back to a centurion? I think that this scene is all foreshadowing for Gaius' story. Not only that he is getting closer and closer to Jesus, becoming stronger and stronger in his faith in Jesus, but also that he's probably going to get demoted. And what does that mean for Gaius? It means that it's way more likely now that Gaius would actually be the centurion at the cross. Meaning that Gaius would be the one that says, surely this was the Son of God. That would be an insane foreshadowing here in this moment. And that in 2 seasons' time, we would see Gaius at the foot of the cross saying, surely this was the Son of God. I think that's a really, really interesting kind of story arc for him. Knowing that after this season, when his son is healed by Jesus and he begins to have faith in Jesus, that things are going to move a little bit differently for him, right? The story is not going to really be around him in Capernaum anymore. Things are going to change for him. But I do think it's definitely likely that he's going to get in trouble with Quintus, and Quintus is going to demote him, especially since it's mentioned specifically in this scene. So I don't know. It's really interesting. It was a really intense scene. I can't wait to hear it with music and all the background noises and stuff. But Quintus is definitely unhinged here. We're seeing a different side of him that we have never seen before, and he looks very scared. Remember, Quintus is not going to be the big bad guy forever. He's not going to be this major villain because we have people like Pontius Pilate and Herod Antipas and Caiaphas that are now coming into play that are way more of a big deal, especially historically and scripturally, than Quintus is, right? Quintus doesn't exist in history or in scripture. So, of course, we're going to see these other characters take a way bigger role than Quintus does. But we're going to see him continue to trail along because obviously he's been there since season 1. We want to see this arc of this character kind of play out. So I do wonder what's going to happen with him. Maybe he gets demoted. Maybe he gets executed. Who knows, right? Anything could happen with Rome. I don't know what's going to happen with Quintus. If he's going to be punished for not being able to keep his city in line. There's a lot of cool stuff that could happen here. So I'm excited to see what happens with Gaius as well. Obviously, we're going to see him and his servant get healed, his son get healed, right? And then he's going to come to faith in Jesus. We saw some of the behind the scenes of a conversation between Jesus and Gaius. So I'm really interested in that as well to see how that plays out. There's a lot of really cool things that are going to happen with him in general. And remember, the scriptures, I always say this because it's so mind-blowing to me. Remember that the scriptures say that Gaius has more faith than anybody in Israel. That's what Jesus says. He says, wow, in you I have found more faith than in all of Israel. So it's this idea that this random Roman centurion has more faith than all of the apostles. He has more faith than anybody that's a part of Israel. And that's kind of a jab to Israel in a lot of ways. But it is going to be really cool to see the continuation and the arc of Gaius's story. So